Hello Grinder School, this is CodeRed Rules. I'm here with the GCS number 4 hand histories from last weekend. So let's go ahead and get right into them. I picked out 16. I should be able to get to them, all of them in time, and still have plenty of time left over. So here we go. This first one is actually going to be between Keshiman and Pyrotos, but I didn't receive Keshi's hand histories, so I just got Pyrotos's up here. We will see what Keshi has here at the end of the hand, so it'll be pretty interesting to say nonetheless. Otherwise, pretty much regulars all the way around here. If I see any usernames you guys aren't familiar with, then I will point them out to you guys. So Sammy here opens up to 4x in late position. Not necessarily something that I'm a big fan of. You know, you could probably raise it up 3x, but it is a value raise. So at the same time, it doesn't really matter if we make it 3x or 4x here because we really don't mind if we're called because we're going to be ahead of a calling range. So Keshiman decides to go ahead and put in a re-raise here, and that's fine, you know. And the thing is, though, the re-raise size isn't very good. I prefer a re-raise here of at least probably like $1.40. You're out of position, so I usually would say like make it 3.5 or 4x. I would make it 4x if Pyrotos made it 3x, so therefore I would make it 12 big blinds here. But since Pyrotos made it 4x, I would make it 3.5 times his raise, otherwise known as you just add 10 big blinds onto whatever raise size he made it, and that is 14 big blinds, so $1.40. So I'm not a big fan of the re-raise size. And Pyrotos goes ahead and makes a call here, which is a loose call, and I'm not going to defend it too much. We don't really know if Keshiman's going to be re-raising us fairly light here. You can probably assume that he is going to be, and somewhat, and this has to be at the very bottom of our re-raise calling range for sure in position. But it's better than probably folding, and you know, I mean, or we could 4-bet it, but at the same time, like ace jack suited still has some decent value against whatever hand that Keshiman has. And the flop comes 9-8-6 rainbow. Not a very good board for really either of these guys. And I call it Keshiman bets it out, and Pyrotos goes ahead and makes a call. I question Pyrotos' call on this flop. One, you know, the stack sizes are lined up in such that we can't really bluff a later street. Perhaps maybe we can bluff the turn if we get checked to. Another thing is who's more likely to hit this board, him or us, right? If he was bluffing us, chances are he's going to have like a 9-8-6 kind of hand, right? I mean, unless he has a hand like King 10 or Queen 10 or Jack 10, but even Jack 10 has a lot of equity against us right now, so we don't really want to be getting it in. And so does Queen 10, and so we're really hoping he has a hand like King 10 or 7x. At the bare minimum, right? If he has a bottom, under pair, our overcards aren't very good, and if he has a hand like Ace Queen or Ace King, then our overcards are extremely dominated. So, not a really big fan of this calling on this flop. There are some flops where we can call, some flops where we can bluff raise, but then again, there are just some boards where we just have to give up on, and this is actually one of them, in my opinion. So Keshiman checks this jack on the turn, and Pyrotos should be very happy now that he hit his hand. You know, hitting the jack is much better than hitting the ace right now. Unlikely to be dominated, and the problem is we really can't get stacks in right now without probably feeling like we are going to get way behind or going to get looked up pretty far. Or rather, I guess when the stacks go in, we're going to be pretty far behind probably with hands like jacks or better. The worst case scenario, we're looking at like maybe pocket tens by Keshiman, but even that's pretty unlikely. The river bricks off, completes rainbow. Keshiman decides to make a little half-pot bet here, and Pyrotos, obviously I think folding is out of the question right now with our topper picker and a re-raise pot. So the question is whether or not we should be raising or whether or not we should be calling in this situation. If we feel like our opponent had air pre-flop, and if we feel our opponent had air on the flop, which is why we called, then there's really no value in a raise here, hypothetically. Because I know what happened. I mean, I'm results oriented somewhat, but I do know what happened at the end of this hand. But hypothetically, there is no value in a raise here because the likelihood of Keshiman having a hand like Queen Jack or King Jack or even Jack 10, is pretty unlikely. given the fact that there are 2 jacks out there, so I mean there's only 8 combinations each, not including the hands that he would call us with. Call us with pre-flop, like if he would call king jack rather than 3-bet it, which I would hope he would, because something that I like to teach is calling the king jack and the queen jack and probably even the ace jack. So the only real jack he could have in his hand range is like a jack 10 kind of hand. So I don't really think there's any value in this river raise at all that Pyrotos actually does make. Pyrotos probably thought like he was ahead, and the thing is, like, you can be ahead here and still not be very good raise, because some of the time we will be behind, and the thing is, we're never really folding out a better hand than our own. Right? If he has queens or better here, I don't think he's really going to be folding. Well, give it the hand that he did call with, he's definitely not folding queens or better. He really should be folding pretty much all of his air here. Now, what happened was Keshiman did call, and Keshiman ended up having king 7 of clubs. If you guys can't really see it, it's hard to see because it keeps going into the muck. But king 7 of clubs. So now that we know Keshiman has king 7 of clubs, let's go back here and see what happens. That maybe whose play was better than when. The re-raising with the king 7 of clubs pre-flop is actually not bad. Again, we probably would want to make it larger. We fought very good for our hand for king 7 of clubs. Probably one of the best flops we can actually assume that we're going to be hitting. Open in straight draw with an overcard and a backdoor flush draw. I mean, it's really good. Our c-bet size here is a little much left to be desired, right? What if happened if we make it $2 rather than $1.30? If we make it $2 here, the pot becomes $6.50, right? And Pyrotos has $6.80 behind. Am I getting that out right? So the pot would become $6.50, and each of you and he would have 70 cents left, so he'd have $6.80 behind. So we set up pretty close to a pot size shove. Maybe we should be betting it larger, maybe like $2.20 or so, to maybe like not entice a call. And also, the larger we make it here, if he ever shoves us over the top, then we're pretty much going to be pot committed anyway. Which is what we are with a hand like king 7 suited here, with as many outs as we have in a re-raised pot. We're pretty much going to have to get it in. Rather than making it small and enticing him to maybe call us, I would actually like to make it larger so we can jam the turn on him. So I guess 2 1/4 would be another 5 or 4.50, so pot would be 7, and our opponent would have probably 6.50 behind. So we'd be able to jam a lot of turns. What cards would we want to jam the turn on? Well, obviously when we hit a 5 or a 10, when we have the nuts, we'd want to jam it in. If we hit a king, we probably would jam it in as well. And if the turn is a club, we would jam it in. And anyone's of the scare cards, like the queen or the ace, we would jam it in. Unfortunately, if we had the ace, we would be getting called here by Pyrotos. But at the same time, you can't really put our opponent on an ace high going to this turn by calling us on the flop. So unfortunately, this isn't a good barreling card for us. So Keshiman does a good job in checking, I feel like. So Pyrotos both did a good job in checking. Keshiman's river bet here is not a very good, in my opinion, for a bluff, because Pyrotos has already symbolized that he's got something that he called the flop with. It's very unlikely that he did call the flop with complete air. At the same time, we check the turn, so it's unlikely that we have a very strong hand either. What hands are we checking the turn with after re-raising pre-flop? Probably only ones that are either complete air or maybe marginal made hands. Marginal made hands can't value bet this river, so our hand range was really only air. We don't have nuts in our hand range because of the pot size, and we don't want to be checking when the pot size is like that, so we can be able to get the stacks in. So the likelihood that we do have air here is very high. Pyrotos, given the way he played it, the only questionable play he could have made probably was calling the flop, which I don't like. But otherwise, post-flop is fine. Well, I don't really care for the river raise either. But what's even worse is Keshiman's river call raise with king 7. I wanted to show you what king 7 beats on this flop, the king high board. All right, on this board specifically, all right, on a board of 8 of clubs, 9 of diamonds, 6 of hearts, jack of spades, or 3 of spades, which you guys can't see. There's a couple cards on there. On that board, king 7 of clubs, I just want to make sure you guys see this, loses to all ace highs and all all other better king highs that Pyrotos could have, right? So the only hands that Pyrotos could have would be Queen 7. Let me find Queen 7 here. He could have Queen 7. He can't have 10-7 because 10-7 has the nut straight. He can't have... or I guess Pyrotos could have King 5 or King 4, King 2. Even then, because all of ace highs we lose to, all his better king highs we lose to, all of his pairs we lose to. So there are these hands, and this is even likelihood that he even got these. Queen 7, Queen 8 we lose to, Queen 9, Queen 10 we lose to, Queen Jack, all better kings. And so I'm thinking this is like the only hand range. I guess some other random Queen 5. Those kind of hand range. But is Pyrotos really calling re-raise with hands? No, he's not really calling re-raise with these hands. So at the same time, I'd like to point out to you that we don't beat any hands that Pyrotos could possibly have in his hand range. So you pretty much just gave Pyrotos $6 here. So not a very good call. All right, I've spent probably way too much time on that hand. So let's go on to the next hand here. Now, as you can see, I've got everybody hands in except for Live Life because he also didn't send in his hands. I chose a lot of, hands that I played because I was playing on all the tables, and I felt like there was a lot of mistakes being made during the hands that I was playing, so I'd like to point those out. I missed a hand, though. Here we go. Colossus has kings. Sorry about that. Colossus has kings, and gets called three-way. For some reason, I don't have NodeEgg's hand in here, but I think Pyrotos is the main component here. So Pyrotos goes ahead and checks it. Pyrotos actually has the double gutter here. Any king or 9 gives him the open and the straight draw, or gives him the straight, as well as the ace gives him top pair, which he doesn't really know is going to be good right now. And in fact, I would assume it's not good. Colossus' bet size here is actually pretty good, and as expected, I expect Pyrotos to check call. Now, he checks again. Colossus bets out, and Pyrotos goes for a check raise, which, in my opinion, is actually a very it's actually a really good check raise. I feel like the bluff is going to work quite a bit. We're representing a pretty strong hand, representing pocket 8s, pocket jacks, or pocket queens, queen jack, or 10-9. That's pretty much it in terms of value range. We don't really have too many bluffs in our range, though, just because yes, the diamond draw did come on the turn. It's pretty unlikely that we have a diamond in our hand that doesn't at least have a pair to go with it that we would check raise. So if I'm Colossus here, I'm actually probably folding to this turn check raise. Colossus actually makes a call. I guess he had a good read. Not a big fan of the call, but at the same time he is right. So maybe Sammy actually does have more bluff in his range than I'm giving him credit for. And then Colossus hits really the only card that hits Pyrotos that that helps Pyrotos out that actually Colossus is willing to pay off. So Colossus gets kind of coolered here on the river, and then Pyrotos kind of gets lucky. Although I would like to see if Pyrotos would jam the river if he doesn't hit the straight. The thing is, Pyrotos can also bluff any diamond that comes on the river as well. So Pyrotos just can't. If he gets called here, he's got to assume that he's going to have to be bluffing the river some of the time when he misses. So there's that. I guess any 9, Colossus could probably fold, and ace Colossus can fold. It's really the only hand that he can fold with, and that's kind of unfortunate because Colossus gets coolered here. But I really don't know about his turn call. All right, so now we're here with the queens and the pocket 8s. Those of you who have watched my How to Master Full Ring series are going to know that this is not a very good re-raise here by NodeEgg. It's a good re-raise size. I think the sizing is fine, so he doesn't give anything away with his bet sizing. But the re-raise itself is not very good. If you guys haven't watched my How to Master Full Ring series, then please do, and especially the part, and this deals with the 3-bets. When NodeEgg 3-bets here, he's essentially turning his hand into a bluff. And I say that because, I'm going to go ahead and clear the board out. My calling range, and he's got to assume my calling range is going to be, along the pairs, right? But I'm probably not going to be folding these under pairs here. My calling range is probably going to be 8s or better, and ace king and ace queen, and maybe like some of these suited under overcards and stuff. Against this hand range, pocket 8s does not do very well at all. I'm thinking 40%, 37.5%. Okay, so it's very bad. Now let's just say that my opening range on the button is going to be very high, which includes probably, I like to say like 45%, but even it could be higher, it could be lower, depending on my opponent. Against that hand range, pocket 8s has a lot of equity here, 60 to 65%. So by re-raising the pocket 8s, he goes from a 60% favorite to a 37% underdog instantaneously once he makes the play. So the fold equity that he has here has to make up for that, and I don't think it happens. And the thing is, even if he does have a fold equity here, why not play pocket 8s profitably by calling, and then turning a hand like, I don't know, ace 5 suited into a bluff. Ace 5 suited still has decent equity against my hand range, and against the a calling range of 8s or better, we're not going to be that far ahead either. But at the same time, we can't really call it all that profitably. So I do not like the re-raise here with the 8s. I do sometimes talk about re-raising hands like 2s through 6s pre-flop. I might stop doing that a little bit more now. I mean, Sugarnut's kind of persuaded me until I can check raise bluff more undercard boards, but at the same time, re-raising a hand like pocket 2s here is vastly better, much better than re-raising a hand like pocket 8s. And I guess you guys could argue, why didn't I 4-bet? Well, the thing is, I don't really feel like NodeEgg is going to be jamming me too light. I don't expect really anybody but an instructor here to really be jamming me too light. So I probably would only 4-bet a hand like, probably would only 4-bet Colossus or Pyrotos or maybe Killzade during these sessions. Because otherwise, I would say most of you guys aren't actually very familiar with 3-bets or 4-bets. So I wouldn't do that. Just because I don't feel like with a hand like pocket queens, I would actually get that much value from it. If I had aces, yes, I'm going to be 4-betting, but like pocket queens, probably not. So here's a classic hand and board when we have pocket queens on an ace-high board, and how are we going to be playing this? Well, at the same time, NodeEgg has to feel like with his pocket 8s, should he be bluffing it out, or should he be checking it? All right, well, let's go ahead and clear the board here. I've got queens. He's got 8s. A lot of you guys are probably saying, well, I would bet the 8s, right? Because we can maybe get a hand like pocket queens to fold. Well, in all honesty, if I feel like my opponent's bluffing me, I'm not really folding any flop with pocket queens, unless maybe like an ace king X flop. At that time, I might fold it. So, really, the hand range that calls him here pre-flop with a hand like pocket 8s, all right, let's just say that my calling range pre-flop was this hand range. Alright. Let's just say it was this hand range right here. If I'm feeling like my opponent's bluffing, right, I'm obviously never folding an ace, ever, to 1-bet. Not really folding king, queens, or jacks to the ace. So really, he's got to hope that I'm folding out 8s, 9s, 10s, and king, queen suited. At the same time, he doesn't want me to fold king, queen suited because he's ahead of king, queen suited. So he's hoping that I'm going to be folding these 7 combinations in my hand range. Now, what would happen, say maybe I do have a hand like suited connector in my hand range, like 9-7 or 8-7 suited. Well, if I have a club, I'm going to be jamming it in on NodeEgg, which I guess I can't have 8 clubs because he has it. So if I've got 2 clubs, I'm jamming it in here, so he has to fold his pocket 8s. At the same time, if I don't have a club and he c-bets out here and I just fold, well, then he loses value to all the air hands that I have in my hand range. So, in all reality, the hands that I call with pre-flop that could ruin him on the turn would really just be the hand like king queen. So if a king or queen comes on the turn, if I have king queen, then he loses. But at the same time, he can't expect me to build a big pot with king queen when the queen or king comes on the turn. So at the same time, he's not going to be losing a very big pot. So if I'm NodeEgg here, I'm checking after re-raising pre-flop because we are turning our hand to a bluff, of which majority of hands that I have in my hand range are going to be calling, and the ones I am folding are probably hands that pocket 8s actually absolutely crushes in this situation. The bet sizing is actually okay. Not a big fan of the bet though. Alright, like I said before, I'm not really folding pretty much queens to anything other than maybe like an ace-king X kind of board. Once this 9 comes off and no deck checks, it's very prevalent that no deck doesn't have. All right, let's just say that I'm giving no deck a perceived range right now. All right, I've got queens, right? No deck right now doesn't have ace-king or, well, really, I guess I know he doesn't have ace-king. So, given a re-raise for value range of aces, kings, queens, and ace-king, maybe ace-queen, right? I know my opponent doesn't have ace-king right around. It's very unlikely for my opponent to have pocket kings on the ace-high board and value bet it out like that. So I can take that out of his hand range. So we're looking at a hand range of him having like ace-queen or pocket aces here. Queens, again, unlikely. So it's either like he's going to have a hand like ace-queen, pocket aces, or like whatever kind of bluffs that he's got in his hand range. If he bets here again, it's actually a difficult situation for me. I probably wouldn't fold it again to one bet, but I mean, I might though. It's actually a pretty close situation. But at the same time, I can't value bet either. I'd be value betting myself. If I had any ace, though, I could probably be value betting it pretty good because I know he doesn't have the ace. And the king comes on the turn, and I mean, again, it helps nobody. Probably doesn't help me. Doesn't help him at all. I mean, unless he had a hand like king queen, which would be understandable. So we check it down here, and I win it down. Take it down. So all right, go on to the next hand. So here we've got Jeffrey with pocket aces, isolating it up. Colossus, very standard call. Everybody else folds as expected. All right. Well, we can see what happens. Right? We know that Colossus has pocket sixes here, and we know that Jeffrey has pocket aces and overcard. Jeffrey pretty much has to bet out here to protect his hand. There is some value in it, but at the same time, we don't want to give a free card here to a free heart. Colossus makes a very, very large raise. I mean, very large raise. He makes it over 4x Jeffrey's bet size. Now, when people bluff, most people are going to be bluffing smaller. I mean, unless they use a donk. Donks like to bluff raise, I guess, pretty large. But at the same time, most people bluff raise small, so it's cheaper. I would give Colossus credit for being, not a donk, and therefore not bluff raising massively large. I say that because Colossus can't really bluff raise too large here profitably. Otherwise, he'd be risking like a 435 to win 235. He has to win that fairly often in order for that to work. So if Jeffrey's thinking that Colossus isn't really bluffing in the situation, then Jeffrey's got to be slowing down with a hand like pocket aces. If I'm Jeffrey here, I might have a hard time folding, but at the same time, I think what Jeffrey did was going all in over the top. Not the best play either. If we had the ace of hearts, it would be much more understandable because the ace of hearts, we have like 10 outs probably against whatever hand of hand range that we're going to be up against. So 10 getting it in here with the ace of hearts isn't necessarily all that bad. Same thing with the kings with the king hearts, or even ace queen with the ace of hearts. Usually all pretty good scenarios, although I'd like to have pocket aces over a hand like ace queen, because we can always hit our 2-outer for the overset. Colossus's hand range, though, becomes like a set. Go ahead and clear the boards out again. On this queen 8-6 monotone flop, Colossus's hand range becomes 6s, 8s, and queens, and then some combination of combo draws, like maybe. Well, he can't really have ace queen suited, right? So he's got to have like ace queen of hearts. At the same time, ace king of hearts because we don't have a heart. And this just becomes pretty unlikely of a situation. I think I select the pocket aces. I didn't mean to. So, or he could have like sweet connectors to the flush, which include like 9-7 of hearts, maybe 10-9 of hearts here. He's got the double gutter. Well, he's got to get the nuts in that instance, but there are just so few like bluffing hands. In fact, that's one thing that you guys remember, is that on monotone boards, players just don't bluff nearly as often as you guys think they do. Think about it yourself. When was the last time you guys bluffed on a monotone board? On a flop like this. It just doesn't happen because people stack off very lightly, but people stack off very lightly incorrectly. So it's one of those conundrums where you think people are bluffing you all the time. They're not. But at the same time, other people will pay you off on these boards because they think you're bluffing all the time. So in reality, no one's bluffing on this kind of board, or very infrequently, but they always get paid off. So this is a situation where you guys can make benefit from. And okay, if we felt like we were still ahead, I would probably call in this situation, and then maybe reevaluate on the turn. If a heart hits on the turn, then we can check fold it. We actually get really lucky here and bank off the ace on the turn, at which point, had it be called, we would have just jammed it in on the turn rather than open jammed rather than check it and do say another shove. But calling the flop raise allows us to remain balanced even though the pot is very large. I mean, it's actually a very tough situation. If we call the flop raise, all right, and we check the turn to him and he gets it all in, the likelihood of him bluffing then goes way, way down. He's taking free cards with a heart. He's taking free cards with a lot of his combo draws he's got. So there's just a whole lot of hands now we can actually fold to. So this is, in my opinion, a pretty bad stacking off with the pocket aces. And Colossus just gets unlucky. I think this is one of his first beats of the day, and he goes on tilt shortly after this. So it should be pretty fun. Colossus makes a loose raise under the gun. It is loose. It's understandable, though, especially with these two donks in the blinds. I believe they're donks. I don't think they're Grand School members. If they're Grand School members, then sorry for calling you donk. Okay, I remember this hand now, too. Colossus gets it three-way. This is actually, in my opinion, a good board for Colossus discontinuation, but being three-way, they're going to have to play their pocket pairs off each other. There's a decent number of two barreling cards for us, maybe even a jack or an ace, plus a king or a queen. And we're going to be folding out a lot of better ace highs. But that said, we don't have to c-bet here in order for it to be profitable. I think just raising a preflop itself is fine, but I would probably c-bet there. We hit probably the best card in the deck for us, it being the queen, and Colossus makes a good play of value betting it out. The small blind caller here could very easily have any pair between sixes and jacks, or even queen jack or ace queen and stuff. So there's a lot of value in our bet for Colossus. An even better card for us is now we have two pair. But the problem is D-bet just overbet jams this river. I was in chat room with Colossus when this happened, and I didn't say anything, but all you can sit there of man, D2 bet's got the nuts. Because there's really no bluffs out there for him to have. There's really no need for us to call it off. We no longer beat pocket aces. We really haven't invested that much money in the pot, 10 big blinds. We're not really getting that great of a price. I would fold king queen here. If the board wasn't paired, if it was king queen 7, 4 deuce, I would have a hard time folding river 2 pair in the situation, because our opponent, I guess, he could have king 7, but I mean there's really not much else out there. But it being a paired board, this absolutely just smells like the nuts, slow playing, getting no value earlier in hand, and then just overbet jamming on the river because he decided to slow play it. So, and I think Colossus timeout. This might have been at the end of Colossus' session where he was tilting, but at the same time, I mean, I would expect him on a normal day to be able to make this laydown, as you guys should be able to make this laydown too. And we can see that he had quads. As expected, we really don't expect to see a bluff here. I don't really know what kind of bluffs we could actually do see. And if he does have a bluff, then it's probably okay. We're not really getting a good price. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're folding in a very large pot for a really good price that we're going to be getting exploited by him bluffing on the river. Okie doke. Next hand, JGB makes a good fold. Chevy Slub makes a pretty standard open, and then I make my call on the button, which is pretty loose. I probably don't normally do it. I guess, I don't know. I think maybe I'm ahead of his range, or maybe I'm inducing somebody else to come in from the blinds. But at the same time, I understand here if you guys don't want to be calling in position with a hand like Queen 10 suited. I feel like Chevy Slub's going to be opening up wide. My hand plays good enough in position post flop that I can actually make it playable. The only problem that I have with this hand is Mr. Chevy's bet call on the flop. He bets the flop. I figure this is actually a really good board for me to bluff raise. I say that because I've got a gut shot, I've got a couple overcards, and I've got a backdoor flush draw that I can barrel with on the next street. So, I mean, at the same time, it's like there's not a lot of hands here that Chevy can actually agree raise me for value. Because if he's got a hand like pocket aces, I'm representing a pretty strong hand here. Like, I can very easily have a hand like two pair or a straight. Not very many draws. Like the flush draw isn't out there, so it's like I can't really represent a flush draw. So being able to raise here, I probably wouldn't even raise a 9. In all honesty, I would fold a 9. So, like, what would I have for value that even a hand like pocket aces could come on over the top with? And in fact, I think it would be a pretty bad 4-bet or 3-bet by him if he did have pocket aces, because he folded all my air, like or hand like I have right now with queen 10. The biggest problem I have with his hand, though, is Chevy calling the big raise out of position. He's only got a gut shot, and he's got really no other backdoor draws. And as we can see here, his 10 is dominated, although I guess he dominates my 9, which would be a really sick turn. But I really don't like his flop call. The turn bricks out for me as well. I mean, I can't really bluff this turn. If it was a 3 diamonds, I would be betting again. And then I get unlucky and he rivers the jack. So really the only problem that I have with this hand is him calling the flop. Okie dokie. Standard open for Pirate. Standard re-raise here for Mr. Chevy Celeb, although I have a problem with it. The problem I have with this is just the re-raise size. You guys are extremely deep right now. You see this? You guys are, 160 big blinds deep. There really isn't a whole lot. I guess when we're playing this deep, there's not a whole lot of hands that you're actually going to have here as a bluff. But at the same time, you don't want to be giving him odds to draw out on you. I mean, he does have pocket pairs, and you're making an incorrect play by just letting him call here with pocket pairs. I probably would make it $1.20, increase my raise sizes because we are deep, rather than keeping it the same. We want our opponent to make a mistake, not make a good call. In this situation, he makes a good call. He really does. Now, on this board, it's very dry. I think Pirate makes a mistake of check raising. If I'm Pirate, instead of check raising this flop, which I think he does, right? Yeah. Instead of check raising this flop, which is going to pretty much be very indicative of having hands like 5s, 9s, 8s, and pocket kings only, would be really the 3 hands you're going to be doing this with, because I don't really think you're going to be bluffing much, or you're pretty tight in full range game. So the reason why we don't check raise this board is because it is so dry, and there's really not a whole lot of scare cards. I guess the 6 or 7 can come, and it's not a very good situation. But if we check call, our hand range becomes like 10s, jacks, queens, and kings, rather than when we check raise, our hand range is only like 5s, 8s, and 9s, and maybe even kings. All right, so think about how our hand range is perceived here facing a check raise. Chevy sub does call, and then what do we do on the turn? Pretty big bet, and Chevy makes a pretty good laydown, which is pretty surprising in a re-raised pot. So which makes me think that like Pirate made a mistake somewhere along the lines where he doesn't get the stack in the middle, either like with bet sizing, or along that line. What would happen, say, like if we were to just lead here rather than check raise? We could lead, $1.50, then the pot would be almost $5, right? And then we could lead $4.50, and the pot would be $14, and then we could get it all in on the river pretty easily by just betting rather than having the check raise. Check raising is almost too strong. If we bet, Chevy's going to have a real hard time folding at any given point before we, if we were to bet, right, we not only would be able to get like $3.50 in, but we would also be able to get an additional like $1.50 on the turn, plus whatever stacks remain on the river. So, if you guys are 100 big blinds deep, I really, check raising the flop is pretty standard. If I'm Pirate, though, like the same thing too, we could just check jam this flop. Don't give our opponent a chance to like make a good tough laydown. If we check jam this flop, like just all in to like $15 overbet jam, pocket ace is going to be like, what in the world is going on here? And he's actually going to have to make the call if he puts pocket kings in our hand range, rather than calling here and then maybe like folding the turn. I say that because of just the pot odds he's getting. 5s, 8s, and 9s is only going to be 9 combinations. If he puts pocket kings and pocket aces in our hand range, that's 7. Rolling all in here for $15, he's going to be getting 13 in order to win a pot of like 18 or 19. And he's going to have like, I don't know, probably 45% equity, or he's going to have to make the call with pocket aces, which is what's really sick about just check raising all in the situation for value. So don't take that out. Don't take that out of your arsenal. Just check overbet jamming in order to just hide your hand range. All right, so this hand we have Live Live raising under the gun, and a donk calls, and then Colossus calls behind, which is very standard with the 6s. I think the mistake here isn't Colossus his flop bet. I actually like Colossus his flop bet quite a bit. We've got to assume that we probably have the best hand right now, given that Live Life, check the flop here. He probably has missed overcards. And the email didn't bet out, so he probably doesn't have a pair. So we're really only worried about makes Pastit, I guess. What's his name? I can't really pronounce it. We're worried only about him. So we can bet it out here for really just protection. I mean, very often we can't bet for protection, but the likelihood of us winning this hand at Showdown, giving a free card to 3 opponents, is very, very small. So I would bet probably $1 here quite often, and probably with like 100% of my hand range. He makes 90 cents, which is pretty good. And then Live Life makes the call. So Colossus has got to be hand-raising Live Life as a hand like pocket jacks or pocket 10s, maybe pocket 9s along the hand range, since he's got pocket 6s. Which is a pretty reasonable hand range to put Live Life on, in my opinion. That's the hand range I would put him on. What happens here on the turn is like the 4 comes, and Colossus decides to keep barreling. And if he does barrel here, he's going to have to fire really 3 barrels, probably all the way down, to get Live Life off his hand, because I really don't expect Live Life to be check folding the 2 streets either, given that he's inducing a bluff. At the same time, I mean, this is kind of one of those scenarios where like we're bluffing, right? And if we're called, we have 0 equity, or we have 2% equity, which is really the kind of bluffs that we want to limit that we make. Check called, and then the king comes, and again we put a value bet out there, which is probably the worst bet of all, in my opinion, right? The king can't help us, period. I mean, the only hands that we could have would be a hand like king queen. That makes only amount of sense here. Maybe like ace queen, going for thin value, right? But at the same time, like if we were bluffing, we probably would keep bluffing this river and not actually be value betting our entire hand range. Because now if we have a hand like queen jack or queen 10, our kicker doesn't even play, so there's not a whole lot in value there. At the same time, I think Live Life played his hand very well to induce the bluffs. If Colossus is going to be bluffing this 3 barrels, I think he's got to be making it like pretty big barrels. What Colossus does is make 3 pretty much smaller bets here to make it look like he's value betting. At least that's what I believe is happening in the situation. Maybe a level up, maybe a level down. I believe most players at this level though are actually more likely to call with a smaller bet rather than to a larger bet. They're not really thinking too much probably about polarized bet sizing, or if like Colossus is going to value town here. But at the same time, this probably would be a good value bet with a hand like queen jack, because it's pretty small and we can get a lot of value from it. I'm still up in the air whether or not I like Colossus's barrel, but I did want to show you guys some of the hands that he was involved in that made him lose the money that he did lose in the session. Live Life actually calls him here, and he shows with ace queen, which I love the way he played his hand with ace queen in this situation. Like checking the flop 4 ways is a really good way to throw everybody off your hand range, and also like it hides your hand range, right? And it's a good way to get value, because if you were to bet on again into 4 opponents here with ace queen on a queen deuce boot deuce, queen deuce deuce flop, your hand range is extremely face up as like top pair, top kicker, or an overpair. And I guess that's why like you can see it there as a bluff and have it be pretty profitable, even though it's 4-way. So yeah, I love the way Live Life played his ace queen in this situation. Not a big fan of like Colossus is barreling with no equity kind of things. That's something I really wouldn't recommend a lot of you guys trying to do. Alright, we're going to go on here. Let's see what happens. JGB could raise his 9-7 suited up. Chevy Celeb makes it open, and I think I call. Yeah. Okay. I remember this hand. And then Live Life makes a re-raise. I actually thought like Live Life was re-raising me quite a bit in the session, re-raising Mr. Chevy Celeb. There's a pretty high likelihood that he is squeezing here as a bluff, or at least going to have like a very wide range in doing so. Chevy folds, and I go ahead and just open jam the 100 big blinds. Now, I'm going to be pausing the video real quick, and I'm going to load up a notepad file here and do some math for you guys. Be right back. Okay, guys, we're back. Sorry about that. And I went ahead and run some numbers here. Now, what I'm going to show you guys, if you guys aren't familiar with the EV equation, then please check out my EV equation videos. I believe they're CodeRed 36 and 38, although don't hold me to that. If you guys are microsite subscribers, you're going to have to upgrade in order to view those videos, but they're well worth it if you guys are very math-oriented. So what I've done was I've plugged it in my equation here. I'm not going to give you guys the equation. It works out to opponent needs to fold roughly like 60% pre-flop in order for it to be like plus EV or break even, I guess. What I did was if opponent ever Live Life ever re-raises here with Ace Queen and then folds Ace Queen, that's going to make up roughly half the amount of times he has to fold. So he needs like one other like re-raise hand here in order for my play to be correct. Right? So if he had like Ace Queen and Ace Jack and then folded those two re-raise, then my play would be pretty much break even. At the same time, like I don't really know as a fact what Live Life's re-raising range is. So if he squeezes here a lot, or if he squeezes here quite a bit, and you have an opponent who squeezes a lot, and you know it for a fact, then shoving here is going to be plus EV for you, more so than calling. Now, if you have an opponent who's unknown, and maybe you're assuming that he's re-raising pretty wide, like I did here, then when you get looked up, you kind of look like a fool, and you end up having to, be in a pretty big underdog, which is what happened here, and I banked up both trays. But I actually didn't put pocket jacks in Live Life's re-raising range, in all reality, because for full rank players, it's not really something that I expect to see more often than not, which is another mistake that I made, probably not doing that, maybe assuming that he will have jacks here, even though I'm thinking, well, most of the time, you guys shouldn't be re-raising a hand like jacks here. If he doesn't have jacks here in his re-raising range, then like if he has like Ace King and Ace Queen with, the queens are better, then I'm very, very close to being break even right now if he doesn't re-raise jacks but does re-raise Ace Queen, which it's kind of close, but at the same time, I got lucky here. And I don't know what Live Life's re-raising, what his squeezing range is in this situation. Whereas, I would normally do this, if I would do this against a reg at my current limit, I would know, like, what his re-raising range is. I would know that he's squeezing fairly wide here. And I could very easily make the raise. So, sorry about that, Live Life, about hitting on you. But, yay, suck out. Alright. I'm going to go here pretty quick through the rest of these. We have, I think Chevy Celeb here could have raised. No, I'm sorry, he didn't. No deck raised under the gun, so that's normal. This hand is just kind of unnecessary for the Live Life, and he leads pot, and obviously no deck has the nuts here. I kind of don't like no deck's like flop raise unless maybe he had a feeling that Live Life had flopped the nuts. And at that point, then it's actually probably a good thing because we don't have the nuts right now. 200 big blinds deep. You really don't want to get in and post up without the nuts. Bad card for sixes for sure because of the 4 straight, so no deck just calls. And then once we boat up, no deck is probably going to be pretty happy. But what happens is like Live Life check jams it all in, and no deck is just like, well, I have a boat, so I'm going to call. It's probably a good thing because I don't really know what kind of hand Live Life could have because I don't really expect him to, like, maybe 7-5 would be it, right? Or pocket fives. But if Live Life's range is like pocket 7s, pocket 5s, and 7-5, and 7-6, then we pretty much have to make this call here because of the pot odds that we're getting. So yeah, it's just kind of weird. And then Live Life shows up with like complete garbage, right? With 3-2 suited, completely unnecessary of a hand. Like should have just been folded at pre-flop. Should have just, it's fine leading the flop here with a gut shot and backdoor flush draw, but once like the turn comes in, just go ahead and fold it. I mean, it's pretty obvious that no deck probably isn't going to be folding the turn, and then check raising the river for 200 big blinds. I mean, it's just kind of spew. So. Definitely not very good there. Okie dokie. This is another Live Life hand. We won't be able to see it till the very end, where Live Life leads 1, 2, and then checks. And we get I'm going to go through how he played the 6s now on both of these streets. Right, he leads the flop with the 6s, which I see a lot of actually bad players do. For some reason, maybe they're betting out for information, or they're betting out to see like where they're at, or all the reasons why you shouldn't be betting out. You should be betting out here to maybe induce a bluff raise, and then call that, or you can be betting out here to prevent your opponent from checking behind. But at the same time, though, if you get called, you're probably not going to be in all that good of a shape. So, I mean, I'm glad that Live Life didn't fire the third barrel on the river, but at the same time, like, there's really no point in us betting the turn either, because if we get called on the turn, we are certainly not going to be ahead with a hand like 6s here. We can actually check call, and maybe like if our opponent has like ace king with the ace of hearts, something like that, we can actually check call and pick off a bluff that way. But in terms of like trying to get value out of our hand, we really can't do that. This is really just way too thin. I mean, if we're doing it as a bluff, it's not a good situation for us to be bluffing. So here, Nodeg has the queens and makes a pretty good re-raise size. You might even want to make it larger because of how deep you guys are, but this is fine too. And then Live Life calls. My problem that I have here is Nodeg's continuation bet. You're essentially turning your hand into a bluff, and I think you know this. And I think you hear me talk about it like all the time. We're not folding a king or an ace on this flop, and we will be folding a jack or worse. So a lot of times people just bet here because it's like the easy thing to do, and maybe like it saves them money or a tough situation on later streets. But just so you know, this is probably not a good situation where we want to be betting. Or Live Life did fold, which it's like yay, we won the hand, but we were already ahead, so we're not actually all that excited to be winning this hand right here. Alright, we've got, 3 or 4 hands left. Pyrotos comes in for a raise, and then Colossus makes a re-raise, and I don't like the re-raise size. Out of position, making it larger would be better. Making it $1.40 would be perfect. Pyrotos calls, which is understandable in this situation. 8 is probably the very bottom of my calling range in terms of pairs. And the only reason why I do that, alright, what happens is you have to play them post-flop, right? You can't really call them for set value. This is a really good board for 8s. It's a good board for us just to float the flop here and call. Alright, raising is not going to do us any good because what's going to happen is Colossus has like jamming range. Is going to include like overs and flush draws and like over pairs, of which like crush 8s in terms of equity wise. So not a very good reason to bluff raise hand like pocket 8s here. What I would do is I would call behind the 8s and then fold the turn if Colossus decided to bet again. Would be a pretty standard play. Colossus jams in and Pyrotos calls, and I believe it doesn't make it off. So you know what I mean? I don't get Pyrotos' play odds very not good in terms of like, I don't know if he was making a bluff play or something like that, but not a big fan. Okay, I believe what's going to happen here, it's a good raise here by Red Lotus. Well, I'm sorry, if I haven't, CM Steph has Red Lotus on full tilt. And is it real as it is Pyrotos, in case you guys are confused. Okay. So here's another interesting hand. Mr. Chevy Celeb re-raises hand like 6s. His re-raise size is good. The fact that he decided to turn pocket sixes into a bluff is reasonable as well, so I can't really argue that. The problem that I have, though, is Red Lotus calling the re-raise. This is the absolute worst hand that you want to be calling re-raise with. Hands are dominated. This is actually a really good hand for us to 4-bet bluff. Not a good hand for us to call a 3-bet with. The reason being is because when we do flop an ace, we can't get any value from it. And I guess we were able to get some value on the river here. No, 2-sub. I think Chevy played his hand pretty well. I might actually turn my 6s into a bluff and try and get 7s through queens to fold on this flop. But just given the fact that like CM stuff called the ace and offsuit, it's not a very good hand, not a very good way to play the hand at all. I would 4-bet if you want to play the hand, just 4-bet it to like $2.80, and you know what I mean. Then you would play it just fine. Pirate comes in for the raise. Sammy calls, which I think is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Pyretos check raises here, which is a really good board to check raise on because he can like represent so many draws, including like flush draws, straight draws, combo draws. And if Pyretos, and he's going to get like a lot of action from Pirate if Pirate has some kind of like made hand. Unfortunately for Pirate, he doesn't have a made hand here. He's got like 2 overcards and a gutter ball. And he calls the flop check raise, which is not good. He calls the turn value bet, which is again not good. Look how like Pyreto set up his stack size. These stack sizes are really well sized. The check raise, the turn bet sets up the river shove very nicely. I'm not a fan of the way Pirate played his hand here by like bet calling the flop. I would have just folded the flop to the check raise, and then obviously folded the turn with a gutter ball. You can't assume that both your overcards are going to be good in this situation. Like even if Pyretos had like ace queen or king jack, I mean your outs are dominated. Like either your ace isn't good or your king isn't good in that situation. Same thing if Pyretos has a flush draw. I mean if Pyretos has like 2 diamonds here, then both the king of diamonds and the jack of diamonds are both dominated. So we don't have nearly as many outs as we think we do. So very standard fold here on both. You have 2 chances to do it, you don't. So, I mean, I'm not surprised to see Pyretos getting some nice value there. Okie dokie, final hand. Let's see what happens here. I raise it up. Pirate calls. Okay, I remember this hand now. And I pretty much like flop the world. At this point, a lot of people would slow play. I really don't see a need to it. There's really not a whole lot of hands that Pirate could have like in his hand that would then catch up to me on the next street anyway if I give him a free card. Or at least like the hands that would catch up to me would be hands that beat me. Like an example would be like a hand like ace queen. If he had ace queen here, like he's gonna hit ace jack and then I'm gonna be crushed. If he has queen jack, he's gonna hit a 9, then I'm gonna be crushed. If he has a hand like pocket 8s or pocket 7s, if he gets a boat, I'm gonna be crushed. So I might as well just like bet it out here, and hope that he has the worst king, you know what I mean, or maybe even like jacks or queens and stuff. So I bet flop. His call pre-flop is actually not very good. I'm not a big fan of the call pre-flop. Once he hits the flop, though, it's pretty standard for him to make the call. And the turn again. I mean, I'm not going to be slowing down, so I'm going to be betting pretty large. I don't know if he thinks that I have a polarized bet sizing here, but in all reality, like I'm not betting this way with like pocket aces or like pocket queens or pocket jacks. I'm taking a much like probably pot controlled route rather than betting it very large. So I guess it's very true that I am very polarized here of having like big kings and then the 10. The reason why I'm betting large is just because like if he's going to be calling me, he's going to be calling a big bet anyway. It doesn't really matter if I make it small or large, and I am trying to build the pot. So Pirate's call on the turn is marginal, although it's understandable. The problem I have though with Pirate's hand is his river check raise. Like there isn't a better hand out there that is going to be folding right now, right? I mean, like jacks, queens, and aces, and like a random king. Queen 10 at best is probably going to be splitting this hand. I give him a chance to see river for pretty cheap. And I actually was afraid he was going to fold because I really didn't expect him to be check raising me here, and then I acted like a complete jerk and slow rolled him um, because I don't know, because I'm a punk like that, and then made some bad chats, and then called it off finally, and then ended up quitting. He ended up quitting because of that, and I apologize for slow rolling you guys, but it was probably only like 2 guys that play with me that I'm able to slow roll, and Pirate was probably one of them, but no real reason to do it. But at the same time, not a big fan of Andy's check raise here on the river. Okie doke. This has been CodeRed Rules, coming to you from Week 4's replays. Hopefully you guys have learned something. Hopefully I haven't made too many mistakes here. Otherwise, go ahead and if you have any questions or comments, stuff like, post them on the forum, and I will see you guys next time.